This is my favorite fight on the card. I mean, that includes Robert Whittaker and Kelvin Gastelum. The only reason I say that is because I've done a lot of research into both of these heavyweights. They both landed on our prospect watch for the month of April. We put our boy Espino at number 6, and we ended up putting our main man, Alexandr Romanov at number 1. The reason why we believe this is the case is that Romanov's tail of the tape is just so good. I think he's going to have the ability to strike and go to the ground if he needs to. The thing I love about Espino is, like, if I'm 40 years old, there's nobody else I want to model my life after. He looks absolutely beautiful, tanned, beautiful slicked hair, nice mustache on the weigh-ins. He looked absolutely great. Might have even changed my mind a little bit on this fight, but the line is hella dictative of how close this fight might be. But let's go into his career a little bit. Amazing showing on the Ultimate Fighter there with Forrest Whitaker, with Robert Whittaker. And it was absolutely phenomenal to see what he was able to do win the Ultimate Fighter. And I kind of told the story on the Prospect Watch, but this is a guy who ended up going 2-0, fights a guy who ends up being a legend in Bellator and just kind of takes 6 years off to get better, shows up on the Ultimate Fighter, wins it, and now is an undefeated UFC fighter as well. The thing I liked about that fight was, utilize the ground game as we expected. Some of the punches were able to get him in good opportune places. I just don't think that Romanov is going to bend over that easily. I do think that that's going to be a fight where you need to actually be a bit more strategic with your shots. Don't expect the takedowns, things like that, to be so easy. But I do think that this fight is going to be very competitive if they get in close on each other. That's where I think Romanov has a bit of an advantage. He looks like a great athlete, good striker. And the way I'm looking at Espino is more so of the, get in close, throw some dirty boxing, maybe mix it up a little bit. And once the fight goes to the ground, I just think that he's going to really try to surprise him. I think that there's multiple different styles of ground fighting. And Romanov might be used to one way, and he absolutely exploited his last 2 fights in the UFC, right? I don't give him so much credit for the Rock Martinez fight. And it's nothing against Rock Martinez, but the way that Alexandr Romanov is coming into the UFC, I just think that he already merits a certain level of UFC fighter. And when you look at what he did to Costa, that fight threw me right off, because it was one of the first times I'd ever seen the forearm choke directly onto the mat. And I did some research onto that. And that's the second time that Romanov actually landed that forearm choke. It's almost like a finishing move. He landed it once in Russia and he landed it in the UFC. And you look at this fight, I think submission wise, it's going to be a bit tougher, but if this turns into an athletic battle, a striking battle, and even just a battle of cardio, things like that, I think it's going to surprise a few, despite how much better of an athlete Espino might look. I think Romanov has such hidden strength, bear-like tendencies that can really be overwhelming for any kind of fighter. And with both of them trying to show off what they can do in the striking department, despite such good ground games and wrestling, I think that's going to be the most fun. I'm hoping that I can see some really good improvements. Espino's coming out of a camp like ATT, so I think that that's going to be something that they focused on, especially if you watch tape on Alexandr Romanov. I mean, the guy really does like to maul you. And I mean, he does throw funny stuff like jump kicks and runs at you with some knees, things like that. So the athleticism kicks in here. And I think the one thing I'm interested to see is how well he does in, say, a third round. So if this fight goes to a third round and Espino's kind of chilling with his BJJ ATT type of cardio, well, that's going to be a problem for Romanov. And I think that's why we're not seeing the lines just shoot up as high as some people might have thought going into this fight, because Espino has a really, really good ground game. He has some good strikes to set it up. And the work against the fence is where I really like it, because that is some of Romanov's most offensive game plays. He likes to get his fighters up against the fence. He likes to fill you up with some punches, and then when it's the most opportune for him, drag you to the ground, fill you up with some body strikes, and maybe even finish you off with a submission. And if you're good at jiu-jitsu, he just finishes with strikes. So in both cases, I'm just really looking forward to a classic matchup of heavyweights where the athleticism actually kicks in. So stay tuned for that one. My pick for probably the most surprising fight of the night. I think it's going to be hella fun, and I can't wait to get into the next one.